the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Christ is among us. Today, there's a lot going on today, right? We have the gospel reading, the centurion. We read that all the time, or about every other week when we have the Malevolent for the sick and the suffering. So we're familiar with that. We're familiar with the lesson of faith and what we are taught about faith and the faith of the centurion. And then we also have, this is the Sunday of the Holy Fathers and the first 6 ecumenical councils. And we're really fortunate in that way, because for us, the boundaries, if you will, of the faith are clearly defined. The dogma, the teachings of the 7 ecumenical councils are out there, and we know what is contained within the boundaries of the faith, which still leaves us a lot of freedom. But we know that the heavy lifting was done by the fathers a long, long time ago, well over 1,000 years ago, when all of these issues were addressed and confronted and resolved so that the church could continue being one and could continue being the church and the body of Christ. And so we have these important things. So, of course, it makes sense that I'm going to talk about something else. I'm going to go rogue. Go ahead, call the Metropolitans on speed dial, I know. But there's something that has really been on my mind this week, which I really think it's important to talk about for a reason that I cannot explain to you. On Friday, I think it was the day that we commemorated St. Paisius of Mount Athos, the modern Greek elder, who really, there's a whole slew of those modern saints that are really astonishing. Paisius is one, St. Porphyrius is another, Elder Sophrony in England is another. There must be almost a dozen of those people. And the number of saints coming out of the 20th century and that are still surviving into this day is simply astonishing. Sometimes we look and we go, well, there are no modern saints. We're not like the old times where they had saints all over the place, but the truth of the matter is, we do. And we just have trouble recognizing them. And sometimes we don't meet them personally, but it should be a comfort to us about that. But the thing about St. Paisius, when I was reading his life this week, because he's always been a favorite of mine, is what a humble person that he was. He was enormously gifted by God, but he was a very humble person. And he was a person that did not, so to speak, beat his own drum, blow his own horn. Instead, he was a person that people recognized as holy, not because of how he presented himself, but because of the way in which he influenced people. And by that, I mean simply his presence, his bearing, his person was such that people recognized his sanctity, and they would go to him for help, and they would go to him for advice, and to be taught, and to learn, and to be given some insight into what they're supposed to do. Well, part of this, when I was reading this life of St. Paisius, it brought to mind something to me. This is kind of the way in which Paisius himself lived, I suppose would be the word for it. And what came to mind is Psalm 31. If you have a Western Bible, it's Psalm 32. And the use of the word in the Psalms is Selah. Now, that word occurs 71 times in the Psalms. Let me read Psalm 31 to you real quickly, and then we'll talk about Selah. It says, it's a psalm of David, a contemplation. Blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord does not impute iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no deceit. When I kept silent, my bones grew old through my groaning all the day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My vitality was turned into the drought of summer. Selah. I acknowledge my sin to you, and my iniquity I have not hidden. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and he forgave the iniquity of my sin. Selah. For this cause, everyone who is godly shall pray to you in a time when you may be found. Surely in a flood of great waters, they shall not come near him. You are my hiding place. You will preserve me from trouble. You will surround me with the songs of deliverance. Selah. I will instruct you and teach you in the way that you should go. I will guide you with my eye. Do not be like the horse or like the mule, which have no understanding, which must be harnessed with bit and bridle, else they will not come near you. Many sorrows shall be to the wicked, but he who trusts in the Lord, mercy shall surround him. Be glad in the Lord and rejoice, ye righteous, and shout for joy, all of you upright in heart. Well, in that short psalm, of the 71 times that Selah appears in the Psalms, we heard it 3 times there. Now, technically speaking, I think that the general consensus is that the word was a musical instruction. All right? Like, take a deep breath, stop, pause, whatever that may be. Although it's not exactly, I'm not sure there's unanimity in what it actually means or did mean. But we still have this note, that's a general impression. But in the church, we have another notion, and we can thank St. Gregory of Nyssa for this, who was very much a person who liked to look into the many layers underneath the words that he found and to find the meaning in those. And St. Gregory looked at the word Selah and the way in which it was used, and he says this: one who has comprehended the term and the definition might say then that Selah is a pause which occurs suddenly in the midst of singing of a psalm in order to receive an additional thought that is being introduced from God. In other words, it's not just a musical term, if you will. It says stop, listen, pay attention. And it is this movement, this idea, that has really been striking me over this past week. You know, there are a couple of reasons and a couple of ways in which we seem to have difficulty in our day and age. And maybe it's every day and age, I don't know. The one thing is that, on the one hand, in terms of the church, that sometimes we feel overwhelmed with what the church might expect us to do. And St. John Maximovich of Shanghai and San Francisco wrote about this very eloquently, and he started his article or his homily, I'm not sure which it was, by saying this: a man often thinks that the Creator demands great things of him, that the gospel insists on complete self-sacrifice, the abolition of one's personhood, and so on and so forth. But then St. John says this, he says, what God requires of us are the little things. He requires that we give a glass of water. He requires that we be kind. He requires that we forgive. He does not require of us what is beyond our capacity to do these things. And so that's one aspect that we have. But then the other one is that the way that the world is, we are torn constantly. And we hear things, they upset us, we get mad, we're angry at this, we're upset at this, whatever the case may be. And so we find ourselves reacting. We automatically and instinctively react to things around us. We instinctively react to what people say to us. We instinctively react to what they are doing. We instinctively react to what is on the news. We instinctively react, and we find ourselves thrashing around with no real godliness in us when we do this. Well, Selah. This is what the meaning is for us when we get right down to it. That when we look at this and we think about this notion, this term of the word Selah, we have to understand that we are called initially to stop, to hush, to be calm, to calm ourselves, to wait on the Lord. You know, there's some other great instances in the psalm where this phrase is used. It's almost always, or maybe all the time, used at the end of a verse where we are being taught something in particular. In Psalm 4, it says, be angry, do not sin, meditate within your heart on your bed, and be still. Selah. In Psalm 88, it says, your wrath lies heavy upon me, and you have afflicted me with all of your waves. Selah. Psalm 77 says, I remembered God, and I was troubled. I complained, and my spirit was overwhelmed. Selah. Well, who among us doesn't know some or all of these things? Who among us has not suffered mentally and emotionally and spiritually over things we have seen or heard, or even things we have done in our thrashing around? Then stop. Stop. Wait on the Lord. You know, that's not necessarily always going to be an easy thing to do. One thing is that we're prone to suggest to God what his will really is, you know? Yeah, by the way, while I'm at it, just saying, this is what needs to happen. And he's like, yeah, right. The second thing is that it's not always fast. St. Silouan waited 15 years. St. Mary of Egypt said the first 17 were the hardest. And we know that sometimes for our good and for our salvation, God does not respond immediately. He simply doesn't do it. He has his own ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways. And so we have to learn patience. We have to learn quiet. We have to learn silence. We have to learn to stop. You know, there was a desert father in the 4th century named Serapion from Egypt, one of the desert fathers, early desert fathers. And he was known really for not staying in the desert all the time. He traveled a great deal. And on one occasion he went to Rome, and he was told about this very famous ascetic woman who was just you know, who had just an enormous reputation. And he went to see her, and she was sitting in a room, and she never left that room. Never left. And he said, why are you sitting here? And she said, I'm not sitting here. I am on a great journey. She was quiet. She was in one place. She stopped. She was waiting. Yet she recognized that simply doing that alone was a great journey. And that great journey is the Christian life. What we should take from this is that when life is not, you know, kind of serves up something to us that wasn't expected and not wanted, it's a lot. If for some reason, either through our own fault or through the fault of other people, we find some of our relationships ruptured and we find ourselves at odds with people that we were not at odds with before, it's a lot. If we find that we are committing sins and these seem to be habitual, we have trouble struggling with them, we have trouble overcoming these things, and we cannot see any progress, it's a lot. If we do not know where the world is going to, if we do not understand what people are saying or why they do the things that they do, it's a lot. So that's what really struck me this week. This notion that we must learn solitude. We must learn silence. We must learn to simply wait on God. And you know, to me, the most striking verse in Psalm 31 that I read earlier is this. I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. And then this. I will guide you with my eye. The only way, if you think about this, if you're thinking about that you're receiving instruction from somebody, the way you're going to receive instruction is that that person may look at a place, telling you, in essence, to go. This person is not saying, all right, here you go, this, and this. We have to be quiet. We have to be silent. We have to be watchful. In order for God to lead us with his eye, we must have our eyes on God at all times. We could not be distracted. We could be going off on one tangent or another. We could not be thrashing around, and I'm the world's champion in thrashing around. I really am. This is a hard lesson to learn. But it's a lesson we must all learn. We want our walk to be a great journey. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, glory to Jesus Christ. Amen.